Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Adam Ruiz. I'm the Government Affairs Director here at the Association of Realtors, and SRCAR is very proud to be co-hosting this event with the Murrieta-Wildomar Chamber of Commerce. The intent of today is to be an informational forum. We don't plan on this being a debate. We do not going to let this turn into a debate. Really, we wanted to provide some insight to the candidates, that you guys get a chance to know them a little bit better and see where they stand on some of the issues that are going to be impacting primarily the housing market from my side and small business over here on Patrick's side as well. So at this time, I would like to go ahead and introduce co-moderator, the CEO of Murrieta-Wildomar Chamber of Commerce, Patrick Ellis.
Thank you, Adam. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I don't know applause needed.
I know.
I'll say that was for both of us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming out and joining us tonight. As Adam said, we're happy to co-host this with SRCAR. One of the things I'll point out for all of our candidates that are up here with us tonight, Heather Estrada, who works with me at the chamber, will be right up front here. She has 3 cards that you'll get very familiar with tonight. You'll see a 30-second card. You'll see a 10-second card, and you'll see a wonderful stop sign. All of those will be appropriately followed by you all, just so you know. Adam and I will help you stay on task with that this evening. We do have, everyone will get a 2-minute opening statement, and Heather will be timing that for you all, and then after that we'll get into some questions. Realistically, with the time we have tonight, we're probably only going to get through about 10 or so questions. As Adam said, he's going to be covering the real estate questions. I'll be covering the business questions, specifically more along the lines small business. With that, just make sure too is when you answer the questions, please just stay seated. I'm going to blame it on the camera because we all have you framed just perfectly right now. We don't want to miss anything in that regard. With that, and what we did, so the public knows, we did pick numbers beforehand, which then address the seating arrangement that you see before you. What we will do is we're going to start on the far left, my right, with Assemblymember Ciardo as the number 1 seat. So he's going to start with the opening statement. He'll get the first question, and then we'll go through, everyone will answer the question. When we get to the second question, which Adam will deliver the second question, we'll start with the second candidate and then move along so that everyone answers the question first to begin with. And the reason we do is sometimes people ask all the time, why is it that we don't ask different questions of different candidates? Well, as Adam said, this is informational. We want to know where the candidates stand on certain issues. So we ask the same question because we want to know sometimes candidates have different opinions on a certain issue, and we need to know that, especially when it comes to real estate and business. With that said, I think we're ready to get started, right? So we're going to go ahead and start with our number 1 seat, Assemblymember Ciardo. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight to meet us and listen to us and hear our ideas. I am another native of Southern California, and 31 years ago we moved to this valley, my wife and I, and she started up her business. She has a small business here, and we've been married now about 35 years. Along the way, we had 3 great daughters who are doing great things as young adults now, and so this community has provided us a great place to raise a family. As far as experience is concerned, I have 35 years in the fire service. I started out as a paid reserve in Laverne. I went over as a paramedic, a firefighter paramedic in Inglewood, and then finished my career with the Los Angeles County Fire Department as a battalion chief. I also spent 13 years serving the public on the Murrieta City Council during the formative years of the city. And that was a lot of great experience I had. Really gave me the opportunity to really know and understand Riverside County, and also some of the adjacent counties around it. I also spent 4 years as mayor, and so we had a lot of interactions as that. And this last couple of years I spent in the state assembly, and that was quite an eye-opener. As far as education is concerned, I have a bachelor's degree in fire protection administration. And that's very handy, especially with my experience in this region, because that is one issue that everybody has in the region, and that's fire issues. I also have a master's degree in public administration that I got from Cal State Long Beach. I took full advantage of the community college and the Cal State system that we have here in California. My goal as a public servant is pretty simple. It's to be helpful to people. And so that's what I'm going to be focused on. That's what I've always been focused on. And I appreciate you guys coming tonight. I look forward to answering the questions. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Southwest County Association of Realtors and Murrieta Chambers for hosting us tonight. Good evening, everyone. My name is Fazia Rizvi. I'm an engineer, small business owner, and elected to Western Municipal Water District, where I serve on 6 committees overseeing a budget for almost $250 million. My family and I have lived in Corona for over 20 years. Born and raised in Karachi, Pakistan, I immigrated to the US at the age of 16. I finished high school, finished college, and started my business and moved to the district to raise my family. During the pandemic, I started a nonprofit food bank. I was able to bring food and critical resource by holding over 110 food drives, giving out 35 million tons of food, serving 50,000 families in the Inland Empire, which has converted now a full-time food bank where we are serving 35 nonprofits and churches in the district to help families facing inflation and the rising food costs. I also serve on the Riverside Community College Citizens Oversight Bond Committee, which is a infrastructure bond for over $350 million to make sure there is transparency and accountability for the students, for the infrastructure that's being used for our education. I am running for California State Assembly to bring resources, focus on lifting businesses impacted by the pandemic, rebuild our local economy through workforce development, invest in local infrastructure, enhance and improve veteran services, address the housing crisis, and make home ownership affordable in our district. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sorry about that. Well, first of all, my name is Matt Ron. I'm the mayor for the city of Temecula and candidate for the 71st Assembly District. I wanted to thank you all for hosting us here this evening. Thank all of my colleagues sitting here. I know it's not an easy thing to do. And thank everybody for attending here this evening to hear what we have to say. A lot of folks don't know this about myself, so I'll introduce by saying that I grew up in low-income housing in Reno, Nevada. Watched my mother struggle. Back then it was called low income, not affordable. And watched her struggle, go to nursing school, and ultimately be able to afford a house and lift us out of poverty. The result of that for me personally was understanding that education was something of deep value and something that regardless of what happens in your own personal life, something that can never be taken away from you. So I might have taken it a little bit too seriously because I went back to school and did my bachelor's and master's degree at University of Nevada in biology, did a PhD with UC Davis and San Diego State University, and then went back to law school a few years later at USD. So I collected the whole set and I have the student loans to prove it. But part of why I did that is because I've always thought that a lot of our problems, rubber meets the road, at the sciences, at good information, and at critical thinking, and being able to understand all sides of an issue, be able to evaluate that professionally and appropriately, but also understanding that regardless, rubber meets the road at the policy and legal arena. Years ago, I was able to join the Temecula City Council, and we've had some remarkable successes that I'll talk a little bit about this evening. After the last 8 years of service to that community, I've decided to step down, and I'm happy to have been encouraged by my colleagues to run for the California Assembly, and happy to share that story with you here this evening. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Brian Nash, and I'm running for the state senate seat here in the 32nd district. My background is probably a little bit different than some of everyone else's here. I actually grew up just outside of Flint, Michigan. My mom was a teacher and a principal. My dad was a small business owner in the trucking industry. And my background was watching GM fall apart in Michigan and watching it go overseas. And that is something that has driven me kind of throughout my life. Education is super important. It's something that, obviously I got from my mom. I learned that lesson the hard way a little bit later in life because I did go to college for pre-med. I was thinking about being a doctor, but with one semester to go, I decided to drop out. The good thing about that is it gave me the opportunity to work at jobs that really require perspective to see how people live. Seeing wage theft, seeing issues such as people just not being able to make ends meet, like literally living that life is something that I will take with me forever. I was fortunate. I found another job at a financial institution and ultimately got me back to school. I got an undergrad in finance. I then went immediately for grad school and got an MBA and a master's in data analytics through Indiana University, which is a top 20 business school in the country. Since then, I've done a whole bunch of work in a number of different areas trying to just help people. Politics was never going to be my thing. Trump changed that, unfortunately. And seeing things, moving from Michigan to New England where we lived for a while, moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, to California, one thing's the same, right? We have these political differences, but everyone just wants to live a better life. And from my perspective, I see education as that conduit to everyone being able to live a better life. Anything from regular schools, STEM courses, that sort of thing, to job training programs for people in the future. They're all super important. They're what's going to drive Riverside County and District 32 in the future.
Good evening, everybody. I picked the last number, right? So this is why I don't gamble. My name is Bill Asaley. It's great to see you all tonight. I look forward to answering the questions. I was born and raised right here in Southern California, up the freeway in Corona. I also come from a family of immigrants. My parents came from Lebanon here in the 80s and raised me and my two sisters to have a better life. I was the first in my family to go to college, first to go to law school. I served locally as a deputy district attorney here in Riverside County, and then later as a federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office when they used to prosecute real crime instead of political crimes. And in 2018, I stepped down and run for office because there was an incumbent assembly member who was voting the wrong way. They voted for the gas tax and a lot of other bad policies, and not a single person was willing to run against her. Not one Republican in the whole district. So about a month before the deadline, I did agree to step down from my position and run against her. We ran a tough campaign. We came close to winning, but 2018 was the first year they had ballot harvesting, so we weren't ready for that. Since then, I've opened up my own law practice. I do estate planning and we do other related legal services, so I'm now a business owner. And I'm running again because California is worth fighting for. I think a lot of people feel that Sacramento is working against us, not for us. And it's time to make the government respond and deliver the needs for the people, not what the legislators' pet projects and social experimentation are. So we need to get back to basics and make the government more accountable, smaller, more efficient, and provide for better lives for us. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Great, thank you all. So first question for tonight, and we're going to start with you, Fonzie, that, and I appreciate you all kind of giving us a little bit of your background. What I want to ask though is, and I want you to kind of not just simplify this, but maybe kind of really touch on in 1 minute, how it is that, what is it that inspired you to run for this seat that you're running for?
So, community is what inspired me to run for this seat. I've lived in this community for 20 years. I've been a part of a lot of good work in the community, and I do, during the pandemic, I really went in the trenches with the community members, saw the lack of infrastructure, especially the labor shortages. I started the food bank where when the CMUSD students went back, they didn't have a testing center, so I provided that. I couldn't find a nurse to come and volunteer, so I had to train myself. And these were the real issues which I had to hear from our teachers, our students, and that's what made me realize that I am the one who was successfully able to bring resources to them, at a very small local level. at the state level, I can be a fighter and a champion for them to fight for them in Sacramento, and that's why I decided to run. Thank you.
Well, for me, it's a little different because I come from local government, and so for many years now, I've seen the erosion of local control and the state changing a lot of things, whether it's for public safety, transportation infrastructure, education and schools. Temecula is a wonderful example of a city who has done things the right way. We are now the 16th safest city in the entire United States. And I'm proud to say that, and I'm also proud to say that, since being on the city council, we have had remarkable gains in helping to find people the help they need and lower our homeless population as well. Our crime is down, we've opened up new educational institutions, and we've put $117 roughly million in state, federal, and tribal funds into our local infrastructure and freeways. California has been going in the opposite direction. I think a lot of folks can learn from what we did at the city of Temecula and help bring balance back to Sacramento.
Yeah, so for me, the situation is a little bit different. So my wife and I moved here from Sacramento about a year ago, and we were given an opportunity to decide in an area that looked like it was ready for change. And this was kind of the area we picked. And, Nancy, we're not gonna argue the fact that the beach is a lot closer, which is awesome as well. But really for me, the thing that drove this decision was the ability to see kind of some of the similarities to what I see in Flint. Things like warehouses just being absolutely everywhere throughout the district. Just seeing lack of innovative, businesses that really can drive the future. We have a lot of small businesses, but there are a lot of similar businesses. And I think that if we can diversify that, that is something that will drive us to have the next best decades, for just decades to come. So we'll go from there.
I touched on it briefly, but I'm running because California is leading the way in all the wrong places. We have the highest taxes. We have the highest homeless rate of homelessness. We have the worst performing schools despite spending the most amount of money. We have a surplus in our budget, but we don't have enough electricity and water and roadways for our citizens. California is mismanaged and it's failing. Now, who's managing the state? There's a super majority of one party in the state, it's the Democrats. So you have to do something different. And so I'm running as a common sense Republican. I want to focus on the issues that matter, like I said, the basics. I want to make crime illegal again. I want violent criminals to serve time in prison. I want to get dangerous people off the streets. We need to enforce quality of life crimes. We need to make the educational system work for parents and students, not for teachers' unions. We need to invest in our infrastructure and have actual free public roads, not just toll roads. And that's the end of my time.
So my inspiration for running, number one, was that for the Senate district, they drew the district pretty much where we're in the center. And I know every one of these cities, and I know this region so well, that, I know what we grew up in. And I didn't have it easy when I was a kid, but boy, did it get great when I moved out here. And I want other families to have that same opportunity that my wife and I had to raise their kids in a great community. And all of these communities are in the same boat. They're growing, they're expanding, they've got great school systems for a lot of them. And the state is really reaching down and trying to change us, and it's not for the better. And so for me, it's all about being an advocate for all of us that live out here, and having the experience of being here for 31 years sure helps with that, because I know where we came from, and I know how we got here, and I know where we need to go. So that's why I decided to run for the Senate.
Thank you, candidates. Just quick ask by Ken of the audience. Appreciate the enthusiasm, but just so that each member can get through their question, if we can just hold off on any kind of applause or reaction there till the end, I think that'll help things flow. So candidates, thank you once again. So we'll move on then here to Mr. Ron with my first question here. It's no secret, there's a lot of challenges to get into the home ownership market these days, and one of those biggest challenges right now is down payments. With the cost of houses and the affordability challenges that we have. The governor recently earmarked some funds finally for home ownership, and part of that was for down payment assistance programs. So my question for the candidates this morning are, What are your thoughts on down payment assistance programs, and should that be something that the state jumps in to help fund some of these programs?
Well, the part of the reason why we're in the situation we're in is because the way the state has chosen to run California and manage our housing market. Our housing market historically has been, a private sector endeavor. I'm never thrilled to see government interfering in our normal course of our lives and our business, and so that deeply concerns me, to be honest. Affordability is a huge issue for all of us. I've talked about my own struggles in our own family's lives, and I understand that. But the one thing that's not talked about is the protections for affordability, workforce housing. We had a report at the city that talked about low-income earners and low-income housing in the city of Temecula. And of those earners, it included deputy sheriffs, firefighters, nurses, and resident doctors. Simply, the system is broken. We need to fix those issues first before just handing out money to folks without any really good safeguards.
So I read an article the other day that was talking about how there are no starter homes that are technically affordable in almost any state in this country right now. So that obviously includes California. It's a massive issue. It makes it very difficult for people to live where they work. And I believe that we need to find ways to assist. So for full disclosure, I do work for Bank of America. They are a partner in some of these programs, so I want to be cautious about talking about those directly because it's not my place to. But what I will say is this, I am totally okay with the idea of giving people a leg up, giving them an opportunity to gain some equity, and then ultimately be able to move on to beyond those starter homes. This does not preclude us from needing to build more homes though.
So I think this is a symptom of a larger problem of, I agree with Matt, government mismanagement. We need to look at why are homes so unaffordable? And just throwing a little bit of cash at the down payment is not gonna fix it, because I have a feeling if they can't afford the down payment, they're probably not gonna be able to afford the payments. So, and I don't think government should pick winners or choosers. Winners or losers. We should be looking at how do we make the prices go down or increase wages. I only know of one way to do that, and that's through the public sector and the free market. Capitalism and having competition is the best way to bring prices down. And you need to get the government barriers out of the way to let people develop and build and not restrict and regulate. California is overtaxed and it's overregulated. They make you do things like build solar panels on new homes even if you don't want them. They say that adds about $50,000, could add $50,000 to the cost of the home. There's a lot of other regulations. So I think government needs to get out of the way and look at themselves as the cause of the problem and not the solution.
Thank you. So I am the vice chair of the Housing Community Development. So we do deal with these problems all the time. The biggest problem we have in this state is that we have a supply and demand problem. We have pinched off our supply and we have a great demand. So what does that do? That drives up the housing costs. So giving somebody a down payment for a house at $700,000, even if it's 20%, is going to give them a payment that's $5,300 a month when you get done with property taxes, insurance, on all the other things and the mortgage. So what you're going to do is transfer them add to their financial problems and create bankruptcy. What we need to do is we need to address CEQA. We need to address the costs that are going into building a house, because our answer to unaffordable housing is just like Mr. Saley said, it's to add $50,000 more to the price of building a home. That's not going to work. We're not helping people by doing this. And in fact, it feels good, but in the long run, it's going to hurt. And we're going to make a bunch of people with more financial problems than they started. Thank you.
So, as somebody who lost a house and who is in the process of buying a house, I can't afford a house because of a down payment. That's my personal story. So, having government help us it's not a bad thing. Yes, there is a big issue with supply and demand, but these dollars have been already allocated for people. So I am supportive of it, but yes, we need to look at a bigger picture to find solutions for the housing supply. I look forward to the Bank of America who's helping with folks, and I do know a lot of families who are ready to move into homes but are not able to because of down payment issues. So this is something that I look forward to working with. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace, appreciate that. Patrick?
All right, so Brian, you're gonna start this one. So we at the Chamber have been following a lot of legislation this year. One piece of legislation, AB 257, it establishes a fast food council, which is composed of 10 members to be appointed by the governor, the speaker of the assembly, and the Senate Rules Committee, and would prescribe its powers. So give us your thoughts on this bill, and now that it's signed into law, and how do you think this is good or bad for local business, especially when it comes to local franchises?
So, great question. I think that this is something that could definitely hurt franchises in the traditional sense, the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, things like that. But I think this is a great opportunity for small businesses to step up and really kind of start to diversify our cuisine and culture and things like that. As someone that's kind of lived throughout the country, I've seen wonderful places where you can go and have an amazing meal, whether it be Ethiopian or certainly, obviously, Mexican's the most obvious example here. But we're in a situation here where when we want to go out to eat, the opportunities to see really amazing places are fewer and far between than if you just move 30 minutes one way, either to the north or south. And I think that by having something like this, it allows people who have fought for the right to be able to build something of their own is a huge opportunity for them. And yes, it may hurt some of the big wigs out there, but this is something that really can help everyone in the long run.
So one of the issues with California is it's incredibly corrupt, and it starts a lot of times with the unions. So just so you know, this law is because the unions have always wanted to unionize all these fast food establishments. They have not been successful. So they have effectively legally bribed a lot of legislators by getting them elected. They give them a ton of political action money, and they are beholden to these unions. They pushed this law to pass that effectively unionized every fast food chain. So your $10 combo at McDonald's is probably going to jump to $20 or $25 because they're going to be forced to pay $22 an hour for a minimum wage job. And that's not going to help anybody other than the unions, which will provide more money to the Democrats in Sacramento. California, the electeds in Sacramento are incredibly corrupt, and that's why we have to send new people up to Sacramento. And that will be repealed. McDonald's will spend millions to put a ballot initiative, and you'll all have the opportunity to invalidate that law at the next election.
So no better way to address inflation in California with a bill that'll create more inflation. Jobs at fast food restaurants were never meant to be breadwinner jobs. If that's where we are channeling people so that they can afford a home and then trying to pay them enough to do it, we're gonna fail. And guess who suffers? The young people that used to work those jobs that can no longer work them because what they use those jobs for is that because they're flexible and they don't have to work full time and they can get some pocket money. And then they learn to work with other people. It's a job training, basically. No skills, you go in, you come out with some skills that you can build on. We're taking those away from our young people. And so I do not like this law. I voted against it. It's creating more inflation for people that's all they can afford or that's all they have time for. It's gonna create more of a problem for them. And so I don't think it fixes anything.
I think big corporations should not be buying elections by putting stuff on the ballot measures and not giving people enough information to vote for it or not. I am supportive of that bill. Unions have been making workers' life better. Yes, there's always room for improvement, but I am supportive of the bill as we said that it can give small businesses an opportunity to thrive, and it might hurt some franchises, but we want to bring more local small businesses, create new businesses so we can create better paying jobs. So, thank you.
Well, not surprising, but I agree with my two colleagues on either end of the tables here. My first job was at Burger King. I won't tell you when, but I will tell you that my starting salary was $3.35 an hour. So figure that one out. Yeah, it's not a living wage, and it gave me an opportunity to learn, some skills and develop a work ethic and an opportunity to grow as a young person. Our challenge here is when we overburden businesses where we expect to pay 99 cents for a cheeseburger. Those costs are going to increase somehow. And what you're seeing in the industry is a rapid movement to removing employees and automating things. And what problem are we solving at that point if not eliminating jobs and making the market even more challenging than it was already?
All right, Kenneth, thank you for answering that question. We'll move on. I believe it goes to Mr. Saley now. And I want to go back to some of the housing affordability challenges. It's become very popular. Mr. Ron, you mentioned it was low-income housing, and it's affordable housing or attainable or workforce. There's all the different names for it, but we know what it's about. But the cost to build continues to increase. Mr. Ciardo, you mentioned CEQA earlier, and that obviously adds a lot of cost, potential lawsuits and challenges into that. And I want to be very clear, and I think everyone here would agree, that we know that government doesn't build houses. We know that. But what would you guys do, or what do you see as a policy solution to help incentivize developers to continue to build the homes that are so sorely needed?
I don't think they need incentive. I think they need government to get out of the way so they can build. When I speak to developers or business owners, more than the taxes, it's the regulations. It's like you said, CEQA. For most people don't understand, CEQA is a law that allows anybody to sue to enforce environmental regulations. And a lot of these environmental groups who basically don't want any development will use that as leverage to stop developments. They say, if you don't give us our demands, we want X, Y, Z, we're gonna hold up your project in court for years. It's legal extortion. So it does need to be reformed. But let me tell you when CEQA doesn't apply. When the people in Sacramento want to build something, so when they want to build the stadium for the Sacramento Kings, they waive CEQA. They actually wrote a law that says we're going to exempt this from CEQA. But if you want to add a lane to the 15 freeway here, good luck. It's going to take 5 years. So we need to get rid of these laws. They need to be reformed. We got to take away the regulatory burdens that make it impractical or impossible to build and develop.
Well, first of all, you need to get people up in Sacramento that understand how, when you come up with an idea here, what it looks like on the ground. Because this housing issues are a prime example of that. If you increase regulations, make it more expensive to get products and double down on the inflation that's going on in the nation, then the prices are going to go up. If you leave a 35 to 40-year-old document called CEQA intact the way it is right now, and expect it to work in today's world, you're gonna fail. If you continue to add to labor costs with all kinds of regulations, etc., it's going to cost more. We are not gonna get out of this housing hole. So what we need to do is, we're gonna have to look at our regulations, we're gonna have to streamline our CEQA, we're gonna have to continue to not drive up labor costs. And we need to get out of the way and let people work. Let people build. That's who does the work. And we need to let local control determine that.
So yes, CEQA needs to be streamlined. Working on the, serving at the Western Municipal Water District, we've seen projects that just takes, a really long time. And especially with the conditions of drought and what's going on with the water issues in our county and in our state, I believe this CEQA needs to be streamlined, and I am looking, I look forward to working with regulations which we can work to improve that. Thank you.
Well, of course, CEQA needs to be streamlined, right? That's the easy place to start. But the reality is our hands are tied at a local government level. I've worked for about a year now trying to tackle some of our more fundamental housing issues in the city of Temecula. And we have some wonderful ideas and wonderful plans to move forward attainable housing, workforce housing, partnering with our local businesses, our community college, our hospital, Costco, Trader Joe's, right? It doesn't matter. Let's work together to find the housing for the employment to help our city prosper and thrive. California is known for being such an innovative state, and yet laws are in place that say we can't do that to benefit our own city. If we do anything, it has to benefit the entire state of California. You can't prioritize your employers. You can't prioritize your residents. You can't prioritize your own homeless. I'm not here to solve Los Angeles's problems in the city of Temecula. I'm here to solve Temecula's problems. And yet there are so many hurdles in our way for being able to do good, innovative things.
So I definitely agree with everybody, and that CEQA can definitely be streamlined. However, I do want to just say, there is a definite sense of NIMBYism kind of throughout California, not just here in this area. We definitely saw it up in Sacramento as well. In that people don't really want to give up the space that they have because it's already we're already a fairly cramped state. I do believe that there are plenty of things that we can do to help, though. It does require help from the local, city councils, people like that, to work with local leaders, people who are thought leaders in attainable housing, and trying to find ways to work with groups such as Habitat for Humanity, for example, and really being able to partner with these people so that housing can be available, not just for those of us that have been fortunate enough to deal with the good times and the money that comes with that, but those that are just getting started or just need a hand to move forward.
Great, thank you, candidates. All right, so Assemblymember Sciarto, we'll start with you on this one. So the last 2.5 years have been extremely difficult for small business. Impacts of small business right now with inflation and extremely high gas prices are enormous. Would you support a rollback of the gas tax or a moratorium for an extended period of time? And or do you have any other ideas for small business in that regard?
Absolutely would support the rollback for gas tax in California. That's although it won't solve the problem of why we have $7, right now it's $5.50 a gallon now again. Gas in California, while everybody else has $4 a gallon gas. It's a start. And it's helpful to everybody, trucking industry, the people that deliver the goods, because that gets passed along to everybody else. That's some of the stuff that we can do. That's one of the things we can do. I'm in favor of the gas tax. I stood up with the rest of my colleagues up there. We tried to get it passed 5 times, and we got shut down every time. And yet there is no other answer. We have also given out grants, et cetera, to a lot of the community businesses to keep them afloat during COVID. And when those things happen, that's the type of things you need to do. You need to reach out, help them directly, and keep them afloat so they can continue to thrive afterwards.
So mostly the money from the gas tax is going to construction jobs. So jobs are very important, and so I do not support the roll of the gas tax. But also, Governor Newsom just announced $1 billion for small businesses day before yesterday. And as an assembly member, my job is to go fight for that money for our district, to make sure the small businesses are thriving, they have education, they have awareness of what resources are available to them at this point. And that's the big part of, as an assembly member, that's what I want to do, fight for those funding for our local businesses. Thank you.
Part of the issue is that our legislators and folks in Sacramento typically only address these issues in very overt and very robust ways during election years. Where was this conversation a year ago when we knew this was going to start to happen? It's stunning to me that we're talking about a gas tax, and yet, Mr. Sciarto can correct me if I'm wrong, but as the Republican Party sort of collectively said we need to roll back the 51 cents, earlier this year, they actually passed a 4.5-cent increase on top of the existing 51 cents. This isn't solving anything. California had nearly $100 billion budget surplus this year, and what, the promise of a couple $100 back, for our checking accounts if you qualify, and $1 billion here or there, that doesn't solve our problems. We need fundamental change in Sacramento, not just a couple of handouts during an election year.
So just before we came in today, I read an article that said in September in Los Angeles, the average profit on a barrel of oil is $106. Elsewhere, it's $6. This problem begins with corporations. That said, I do agree with the fact that we did do the rebate recently. I don't believe that repealing the gas tax is the answer. This is generally a Republican tactic that is used to make it go away forever, quite frankly. Once it goes away, it becomes a talking point. It becomes something that Republicans can use as a way to say, we're gonna fight against taxes. But that's what keeps our roads in good shape. That's what gives us the ability to get from point A to point B in an area where all of us have extremely long commutes. So I believe that the idea of the current situation with the check is a great idea. And if things continue to be problematic, I would certainly support an additional one in the future.
There's nothing wrong with profits. We are a capitalist society, but the reason California has the highest highest gas prices is not because of corporate profit, it's because of policies and taxes and regulations in California. We should be able to sue these guys in Sacramento for fraud, because when they sold you all in SB1, they said if you vote for this tax, it's gonna solve all your traffic problems. They're gonna fix all the roads, they're gonna increase capacity, it's gonna fix traffic, and none of that has ever happened. In fact, the head of Caltrans said the days of building new freeways is over. You all need to get in buses and trains. We're not gonna build any more roads. This is the true agenda of the power of the people with the power right now. They don't want you in your car, they want you in a bus, in a train, or in a bicycle. That's not their job, and it's not their business. So they want gas prices to go up. They'd love it to be $10 a gallon, because then they know you drive less. This is a form of social engineering, and we didn't elect them to social engineer our lives. We elected them to represent us.
Thank you, candidates.
Thank you. So we'll move on. I believe this question goes to Ms. Risby. COVID and the pandemic kind of changed a lot of the retail footprints. We're seeing a lot more vacant buildings and shopping centers that just don't have the need that they did at one point. And there's been a lot of talk about converting these underutilized commercial and retail centers into residential or mixed-use style of properties. Is that something that you are in favor of, and how would you see that playing out in your district?
I've worked with a lot of cities. I believe in local control, and on the same note that we do have a really shortage of houses, and I'm looking forward to working with the cities to meet their individual housing needs in every city. And if there is a legislation, I look forward to working with them to make sure that the cities have the local control on these issues. Thank you.
All right. First, I would say I don't think our roads are great. I just go back to that one real quick. But the other thing I would also say is, Temecula, we're the only city in the region that maintains 4 firefighters per engine. That is a huge opportunity for us to have a safe and well-protected community. We're also one of the few cities in the region that maintains high levels of police staffing. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from our tax revenue, primarily. So if we start rolling away our tax revenue in favor of housing, not only are we adding more people, but we're adding the burden of keeping our ratios high to keep our community protected without the tax revenue. This is a very delicate balancing act. And so while yes, we have a housing crisis, yes, we need the housing and the affordability and everything that comes along with this, we need more creative solutions than just saying, do away with your commercial space and build housing. Because ultimately that's going to erode the public safety and the quality of life in our communities.
I think we're living in a bit of a dream world if we think that these commercial buildings are all going to just go back to the way they were prior to COVID. As someone who's been a work from home as unemployed for a number of years, it's something that I think most people really embrace. Not everyone. Everyone has their own unique opinions on it. But that does mean that there needs to be a new way of looking at how business is done. That opens up the ability to use the current commercial buildings for all sorts of different things. They can be used for attainable housing, affordable housing. They can certainly be used for high-end housing as well in some of the more developed, really beautiful areas. So I think that there's a real opportunity there to be able to do such things. And I will say this real quick, just to your comment about the roads. We're really blessed in California to have the roads that we do. I live in Michigan, and I can tell you, you don't want to drive down I-94 between Detroit and Chicago.
Michigan's also run by Democrats, but I don't want to throw that out there. But on this issue, I think we need to talk about what's the proper role of government. Instead of saying, we need a law on this, we need a law on that. What is Sacramento's role? It's not to tell us how to live our day-to-day lives. I believe housing decisions should be made at the local level. The community here, the people that are closest to you, your elected city council members, should decide what kind of community you want, what zoning ordinances you need. That's how our government was intended to function. Our founding fathers had a lot of wisdom, and they knew most decisions should be made at the local level, not at the state, not at the federal level. Yes, there's a role for the state, there's a role for the feds, but it's not our day-to-day affairs. And so we need to push back on the premise of a lot of these positions and just say, that's not Sacramento's business, stay out of it. Norco wants to have half-acre lots and have horses, that's their decision. If Corona wants to develop and have high-density housing and apartments, that's their decision. But we need to let the locals decide and stop pushing everything up to Sacramento.
So, this idea comes from one of my colleagues over in Los Angeles. And that's where something like this may work. One of the issues there, having been a battalion chief in LA, firefighter for many, many years, there are public safety issues involved with going into having people mass housed in commercial buildings and old malls and things like that. So there's a lot to converting these buildings. And in fact, it's probably so expensive, it'd probably be worth just tearing it down and building affordable housing. And the housing, and that way the city can spend the money in that regard. But this is another one of those things that Sacramento does, where they think this one size fits all. The areas out here, the cities out here are master plan communities. We are planning because of their failures. We're planning cities not the way they planned them, so that we wouldn't repeat the mistakes that they made. And so that's why, those kind of ideas might work there, but not here.
All right, thank you, candidates. Oh, Patrick.
I got you.
Yep.
All right, Matt, this one's for you to start. Proposition 29 on this year's ballot is another attack on controlling the way business is done in the state of California. We have a very large and growing healthcare ecosystem in Southwest Riverside County, really Western Riverside County. What are your thoughts on Proposition 29, which would require on-site licensed medical professionals at kidney dialysis clinics?
It's extremely problematic. Statewide, we don't have enough physicians to staff up these facilities. And so what do you do in places that are underserved communities, and in particular, where you're asking a physician to be staffed full-time? One of the things that it's not a fair conversation. Let's go back to why this exists in the first place, is because they've been trying for years to unionize the dialysis clinics and workers there. And the dialysis clinics and workers have said, we're simply just not interested in this. We have good pay, we have good protections, we have good services here. And so they have been fighting this year after year after year as a very obvious attempt to upend that industry to get their way. The unfortunate thing we're struggling with now is not only can we not afford it, but it hurts disadvantaged communities immensely, and that's just simply not fair to Californians.
I believe that as a medical facility, you have a bare minimum standard of care that you must meet. And this is something that, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? Like, so when you have dialysis patients in there, any number of things could hypothetically go wrong. It's rare, but it happens. And I could argue that the idea that a corporation could staff doctors in these facilities to make sure that their patients are safe is good for the patients. The fact that you have a doctor there for the company is a risk mitigation tool. It avoids lawsuits. It makes things easier for that corporation to run. So yes, clearly it increases costs, but it is not for the wrong reasons.
Is there a problem at dialysis centers that I don't know about? Because I've never heard anyone complain about the dialysis services provided in California. We have several private companies that do it. They provide good care, and people seem to like it. This is nothing but another attack by labor unions to go after an industry that has resisted their efforts and attempts to unionize and extort them. And to the credit of the dialysis community, they said no, and they are willing to fight, and they spend millions every year fighting this. This proposition will lose. It's a waste of money that could go to other things, better things, charitable things, but they're gonna waste it in politics because the labor unions don't have a shortage of money. They force their members to pay them every paycheck, and they always have money for politics. In the private sector, they gotta take money from other places and spend it on politics. It's unfortunate, and that's part of the reason why California is corrupt and broken.
So I wish I had a few minutes to spend on this. My answer is absolutely not. What has been previously stated is absolutely true about what it is that the real effort is. But having responded to dialysis patients before and dialysis units, dialysis is all about being able to get as many people dialysized as you can possibly get, because they can't wait in line, they can't wait around for a facility that's open. If they don't get dialysis, they'll die. And if it costs too much, they won't get it and they'll die. And so they're not unsafe. They have RNs, they have nurses there, they have nurse practitioners there, a lot of them. And anytime something goes wrong, just like a doctor's office where you have a physician on scene, you know who they call? 911. And then the medics come, and then we help get that patient stabilized and then transport them to the hospital. There's a system that works. We don't need to mess with it so that we can unionize all of the workers and make it less affordable for people to be able to access it.
So this is for the voters to decide, but I do believe that having extra people to take care of the patients, that's good. That's good. And having funding for that helps as well. And I know my colleagues that keep on saying, unions are bad, they're corrupt, but they are providing good quality and living wage jobs for our community. A lot of people are dependent on those jobs. So just saying that it's a corrupt system doesn't find a solution. We need to be working with them to create innovative solutions for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe this is Mr. Nash's turn for this question. So the districts here, that you guys would be representing have very different communities, right? Some of the cities and communities there are nearing build out or are built out. Some have a ton of land that can still develop. We're all faced with, trying to meet our RENA numbers and, going back on that housing supply type of shortage. There is discussion also about zoning and land use and modifying current zoning and land use to make room to build some of these additional houses. Do you agree with using that as a tool to do that? And then again, how would you see that playing out in your district? And then we'll stop there. We'll go that one.
It's a good question, huh?
Yeah.
So, let's be honest, this 32nd district is absolutely huge and it's super, super diverse. So it goes from Chino Hills down to basically Temecula, heads eastward, basically to the Salton Sea, it cuts around Menifee. So it's this absolutely huge space where you've got some really, populous areas as well as other ones. This is an area where I think local control really does matter. I don't want to tell Anza, for example, what to do the same way as Corona. They're not the same. They don't have the same needs. They don't have the same populations. But I do believe that there are ways that we can reduce some regulations to help the process. But ultimately, I want to make sure that we do lean on local officials to make sure that they are suiting the needs of their people best.
Sort of relate to the other question, no, zoning laws need to be made by local electeds. Sacramento has no business in the zoning laws. It's not they're not competent to do it. It's not their skill set, and I don't believe they have the proper jurisdiction to do it. Once Sacramento runs state government well, then they can go tell local government how to run their business. But Sacramento doesn't have the place to tell anyone how to do anything better. So let the locals do it, which means let you guys do it. You guys elect your local officials, you usually get 5 council members, and they can make the decisions you want that are best. The only reason you see this happening in Sacramento is because they haven't been successful at the local level, and so they want to go to Sacramento to override your decisions. That's what that's about. So no, I think those decisions should be made by each individual city.
So every city has a general plan, and that general plan gets amended every once in a while according to the needs of the community as identified by the people who represent that community. Sometimes you start out thinking an area is going to be a commercial area and then it just doesn't take, And so they wind up changing it to a residential area, and they find if you need more residential or multifamily, they'll change zonings to do that. But they also have to pay attention to all their infrastructure, because the infrastructure and the housing and the schools and all of the things that are served, or that those houses are served by, those are affected. And if you don't have sewer systems, if you don't have water systems that are adequate to serve these areas, and the state is changing zoning and creating a problem for the cities, well, then there's a massive cost that goes with that. So zoning needs to be done by cities. And the goals from the state can be part of the plan, but the cities are the best equipped to be able to deal with that.
I agree with my colleagues that local control is very important. The city officials know their infrastructure needs of as sewer, as traffic, as their built out capacity. So local control is very important. And the thing is that state has goals and all the cities have to work. So as an assembly member, I want to be able to meet with city officials and hear them and bring funding to make sure that not only those goals are provided, but with that, they have the infrastructure needs for water, sewer, and traffic fulfilled as well. Thank you.
I find a lot of our legislation to be both punitive and hypocritical, and I know you're surprised to hear me say that. But punitive because we get punished for the sins of other cities, that weren't good actors in housing development or affordable housing development. And so laws are created that hurt other cities, like the city of Temecula, who has always exceeded its RENA numbers in all 5 cycles. And not because of the urging of the state of California, but because that was our plan for our city. And hypocritical because, we're being told now that you can turn industrial sites and commercial sites and all of these things into housing. We zone to protect people from living in industrial and commercial sites. We talk about environmental justice and protecting, health and safety of our community based on, that was why zoning was created in the first place. And now the state of California is saying, no, ignore all of that and go ahead and put low-income people in high hazardous conditions. It's ridiculous.
All right, Kenneth, thank you. Patrick?
All right, thank you. All right, we're 1 hour down, we only have 2 more hours to go. Just a few more questions, I think. All right, so Bill, you're on the clock here, starting next. So we've seen unintended consequences of legislators writing legislation to crack down on big business without considering the unintended consequences to small business, AB 5 being a perfect example of that. If elected, what steps would you take to avoid these unintended consequences, and what will you do to assist small business?
There's a lot in that question, but AB 5 is a great example of what happens when Sacramento tries to tinker with businesses. AB 5 is a disaster for independent contractors and people who want to run their own affair. Look, I think the fundamental problem is Sacramento's too involved, not enough involved, so we need to roll back some of these policies. But the bigger problem is who's in Sacramento? Who are the legislators up there? Look at them. A lot of them have never worked in the private sector. They're activists. They're government bureaucrats. They're people who get handpicked to run by political consultants and unions, yes. So you need to have people with actual real world experience, people who worked in business. I've been working since I was 16. My first job was at Macy's, and I've been working ever since. I worked in government, I was a prosecutor, so I have an understanding when they want to change criminal justice laws and pass things like Prop 47, I know exactly what that's going to do, and that's one of the reasons I ran, because I knew what was going to happen. We're going to have, it was going to be a mess in the streets, which is what we have now.
So my answer for this question is the same answer I have for a lot of different areas. Legislators are not experts in everything, and I will be the first one to tell you that I am not an expert in everything. Yes, my wife has a small business. But that does not make me an expert in what is going on with small businesses and what's creating the inability for them to be successful or even consider coming to California. So the first thing you need to do is get together with them and find out from them what it is that is injuring them and keeping them from being successful. I look at every piece of legislation through that lens, and when we have questions about how it affects them, we consult with chambers of commerce, we consult with business owners in the community, and we listen to them, because they're the ones that are ultimately going to tell us how that affects them and whether we should be supporting something or not. And so that's the best thing I can do, is consult with people who are experts, who are affected.
So as a small business owner, I see a lot of regulations does get imposed, which are not good for our local community. It might be good for LA or Northern California, but that's not good for us. That's something, that's one of the reasons that I stepped up, that I think the legislature needs to hear from businesses of what's going on. I've been a part of Corona Chamber and working with them and looking to partners with different chambers to learn about the issues, what the rest of the businesses, small businesses are feeling, and to learn and implement policy with that. Thank you.
Well, again, going back to punitive legislation, that's exactly what we're talking about here. You know, why not talk to the business owners who have subcontractors, have folks involved? You know, I've been a small business owner in California for 20 years now. I know exactly how difficult it is when California changes laws, changes fees, changes everything. You know, part of what I do for a living is work very closely with our firefighters and address issues with wildland fire. I'm proud to say we're building the first West Coast Center of Excellence in Firefighter Mental and Behavioral Health, just about 25 minutes away from here. Nobody wanted to build that center in California. I advocated for that for years because they know how difficult it is. They know how challenging it is with the employment laws. And there wasn't a single person in the International Association of Firefighters or beyond that who wanted to land this in California. And yet CAL FIRE is the single largest fire department in the United States. It needs to be here in California. We have been a state of innovation and prosperity for so many years. We're the 5th largest economy in the world, and we need to start acting like it.
So ultimately, I agree. This is something where we do need to work with our small business owners to make sure that we're finding the right solutions for them. I think the bill was well-intended. I think it makes sense for certainly larger corporations, larger companies that, you know, the gig workforce, if you will. There's a reason why that's there. But at the same time, I think that it's important to make sure that we are helping the little people. They're the ones that are going to drive our economy forward, not just now, but certainly 10 years from now, 2 decades from now. They're the ones that are going to continue to make sure that we run it appropriately. Oh, by the way, I liked your last comment. I appreciate the fact that you like the workers and the people that started in business and didn't just live government life. I appreciate your endorsement.
All right, we'll move on to my final question here for Mr. Ciardo. This is something that we in the real estate industry have to deal with our clients every single day. It's affected homeowners, probably everyone in this room, including yourselves, and it's fire insurance. It's affecting our ability to do transactions as fire insurance has either gone away or become so inexpensive it possibly disqualifies people. Is there something at the state level that can be done to help make sure insurance is both available and available at affordable rates to protect the homeowners in our area?
Yes, this is going to be a long process. Fire insurance, of course, is tied to risk, and risk is tied to conditions. And in California, we have done nothing right with vegetation management for years and years. And so we have put houses in pathways where they are at more risk. And because of that, we've had some pretty significant fires that have cost the insurance companies millions and billions of dollars. And that's why these rates are going in the direction that they're going. And some people won't even get fire insurance. We have to do a better job of making sure that when we build communities, they are insulated from the areas around them. Because that's all that's left, frankly. The entire California is a fire risk. There's not a community that doesn't have it around it. So if we do a better job at making sure that we do the vegetation management that's needed, then they won't be having the risk that they have, and therefore their insurance companies will feel free or feel better giving them insurance.
Absolutely, we need to find the solutions to find that. But California is facing climate change. This is a big part of wildfires and what's happening in our state. So we really need to look into clean energy and invest in it. And that, along with looking into fire insurance and working with to bring the resources for it.
You know, it took us 150 years for us to get into the position we are here today in California. The frequency and intensity of fires in this state is unlike anything we've ever seen. And even nationally, we used to burn in the 1970s 3 million acres a year. Today, that's well over 10. And in one single fire in California, we can burn 1 million acres with a blink of an eye. The system has created this problem. The way we do land use, the way we manage those properties, and unfortunately, when you look at communities, whether, you know, I met with folks in Coto de Caza, and I met with a community association in Murrieta. Both communities have experienced nearly 1,000% increase in their insurance costs year over year. And the state of California allows, you know, this sort of black box analysis of risk and isn't fairly addressing the conversation. I have been talking about this for 15 years in California. It's nice to see the rest of the state finally catch up to us, but we need, again, fundamental change that only comes from the expertise in this industry. Sorry, I'm way over time. I'm trying to ignore you and look in that direction.
All right, so yeah, I do ultimately agree with Kelly Sayardo for change. This is something that it is based on risk, and it is something that we need to find ways to work with it. The insurance companies are obviously there to make a profit. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that people aren't being forced from their homes that they may have had for 20, 30, 40 years. I believe this is where the state can step in and help. I don't suggest that we continue to build homes in these areas. This is where local planning goes wrong, right? We put places in the wrong spots, and unfortunately people end up suffering because of it. But at the same time, I think we should make sure that we do help those that are currently affected by these issues so that they don't have to leave the places that they love.
I believe the issue of the insurance with fires has to do with what someone in Seattle said, it's risk. It is more expensive now to insure these properties because the fires cause so much more damage than they ever have. And the question is why? It's because of the forest management that the state has basically outsourced to the environmental groups. If you actually care about global warming or climate change or the environment, you would manage these forests better. One fire emits more carbon than anything we're ever going to do in our lives here. I mean, there's so much carbon that's emitted from those things. It's the biggest hypocrisy I've seen. So they need to allow what they used to allow, which is to go in and take out the dead trees, targeted lumber removal. They need to allow controlled burns. They need to allow the experts to manage these forests so when we do have a fire, they're not these huge out-of-control fires. They could be managed by our firefighters. We have excellent firefighters. They know how to do their job, but they can't do it when there's so much fuel that's built up over years in these forests. So let the experts do their job.
All right, thank you, candidates.
All right, that's gonna wrap up our questions. Now we're gonna go back to our closing statements. So each one of the candidates is gonna get 1 minute. And we'll go in reverse order this time. So that way we're gonna start with Bill, we'll go down to Assembly, we're gonna start to the last. 1 minute.
Oh, 1 minute closing.
Okay, you have a choice in November. That's the beauty of our republic here. You get to choose every 2 years who you want to represent you in Sacramento. So if you're happy with the way California's going, you like the cost of living, you like the homeless on your street corners, you like the crime, you like the violent crime, you like the traffic, you like it all, keep voting the way that people have in California, which is for the current party. If not, do something different. And I want to go up there and I want to lead a new voice. I think we can have a new contract with California. We can focus on educational freedom. We can focus on giving parents more rights over their kids in schools. We can focus on increasing penalties for real crime. We can make policies that make fire management better. We can provide for electricity by building nuclear power plants instead of just shutting down power plants. You know, my parents left the country where they don't have reliable electricity. They didn't come here to have blackouts. So we're the United States of America, we're California, we're better than this, we can do better.
So my biggest issue in this race is education. It drives everything that will drive California forward or backwards. We have a situation right now where there are people running for school boards all across this state that are they're doing this under the guise of wanting to bring freedom to their school boards, like what you're talking about. But the reality is that what they're doing is actually going to push us back 50 years. They don't have the control that they think they have. This is something where these things are set at the state level and they are not mandated. So we are in a situation where we need to make sure that we're giving our people the ability to get ahead. And that includes not just K through 12, but also training and retraining programs so that we can build the jobs of the future right here. These are the things that would solve our climate change issues. These are the things that would ultimately help to build a much better, longer, more vibrant California and bring us back to the prosperity that we should have.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody for again hearing us out this evening and joining us at this candidate forum. I think it's important to recognize that what we have in front of us here in the state is a very important crossroads. I think we can all agree that we haven't seen a nation, a state, or a community as divided as we have seen in recent memory. It's been a tough road the last few years, and myself included. It's aged me horribly. But one of the things that I've heard from so many folks who decided to quit early and jump out of the legislature or city council or a school board seat is that this isn't what I signed up for. And I always ask, what did you sign up for? The parades and the ribbon cuttings and the happy times? Because no, you're here for exactly this scenario. And we need people in Sacramento who have the experience, have the background, have the expertise. This isn't Little League. Not everybody gets a chance to bat. We need folks who know how to run this state and know how to do it from the day they get started. Thank you for your opportunity and listening to us this evening.
Once again, thank you so much for having us here. It was wonderful to hear from other candidates. I'm running for office. This country has given me so much, and I am running for office to give back to my community and this country. I am elected. I serve on the Western Municipal Water District, and drought and water is something is top of mind for everybody I have experienced, I've been working with, and with my relationship at the legislature, I will be fighting and bringing resources to my community, which is really dire needs of infrastructure funding, for funding for schools and education. So I am running to bring and fight for my communities. Thank you.
So California is in dire need of changing a little bit of the direction that we're going. We have problems with our economy. We're doubling down on the inflation that the nation is doing, and we also have problems with our keeping our communities safe. So there are a bunch of problems that we need to be able to get credible leaders up into Sacramento so that we can balance a little bit of this power. We have a power imbalance, and that's another huge problem. And so we need people that have knowledge that is specific to Riverside County and people with the experience. And I've been here 31 years, folks, and I've lived in this area, Southern California, for 62 years. I kind of know about everything from Chino Hills all the way down to Julian, which is where this district stretches to. We need credible solutions, and working with other people, that means across the aisle to create credible solutions for these problems that are in California. And if we don't do something about electricity and water, we won't accomplish anything. So thank you so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's give everyone a round of applause. So before we wrap up here, just a quick statement for myself, and then I'll turn it over to Adam to close this out. I just want to thank again all of you for coming out tonight and sharing your point of view. We appreciate every one of you and what you bring to the table. I know I will let you know on behalf of Adam and myself, any one of you we are more than welcome, we more than welcome you to come and talk to us at any time. Obviously, my expertise being business and small business, Adam being the realtor side, but we welcome conversations with you always and ongoing when it comes to these different challenges that we all face on a daily basis. So I'll turn it over to Adam to
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I do want to thank you guys for coming out tonight and sharing some of your ideas and thoughts with us. Staying on time was amazing. Timer thing worked well, and you guys were spot on, so we appreciate that. And know that you guys, signed up to be community service, but it's not easy to sit up here and, kind of face the fire and squat out in front of everyone. So I think we should recognize, once again, thank you very much to our candidates here. Our intention tonight was to bring information to you. This was not an endorsement, this was not a debate, anything. Hopefully you guys got the opportunity to hear what you needed to. If you don't, or you still have questions, I encourage you to get to know the candidates better. I'm sure they all have web pages, and you can, probably follow them on social media or whatever you need to do. But the thing that we want to put more than anything out there is get to know the candidates so that when you're making a vote on November, you're making an informed vote. So being here is that first step, and we just want to thank you very much for being there. Patrick, thank you very much for the chamber for hosting with us as well. Joseph wants to get a formal picture here. You guys on the Instagram for the picture. I will close out. Thank you guys very much. Have a great evening.